Are you looking to retire this year? Or have you already retired? Or even maybe been retired for some time? I've been thinking a lot about what I would be doing if I was looking to retire this year. I have been retired for a number of years, and I'm sort of making a few changes with a few things in my life, due basically to the global situation going on at the moment. I don't know that it's going to affect us a great deal here in New Zealand. I like to think that's the case. But when anything goes global, it goes everywhere. So I've been thinking about what I would be doing if I was looking to retire this year. And here's just a few things that I've come up with which may or may not be useful to you, especially if you live perhaps in the Northern Hemisphere, where there seems to be a lot of unrest in various ways and because of various reasons. Not to say that it's going to come to anything huge, but I would be prepared, I think, to err on the side of caution rather than just launch into basically retiring thinking, well, this is what I'd planned to do since 5 years ago. I would be having a little rethink at this stage of what I would be doing. So I've just made a note here of about 5 things I would be looking at doing if I was looking to retire over this next 12 months, or I had just retired, or had been retired for some time. Now, the first one of these things I'm thinking about basically is aimed at people who are looking to retire, maybe this year. The first thing I would advise is don't. If you've still got access to a job and you're still able to work and you're allowed to work because of your age, I would hang in there for at least another 12 months. Just because of the uncertainty in the world, I would be inclined to be holding on to that regular income coming in. Even if you do qualify for a pension, and that is like secondary income coming in, I would be inclined to hold on to my job just a little bit longer. In times of uncertainty, I think it pays just to be careful rather than being just, this is what I was going to do and I'm going to do it anyway. By the end of, in another 12 months, maybe by the end of this year, by the end of 2026, we may have a bit more of an indication on how things are looking worldwide and just how we think we're going to be off financially. And that's the big issue when you're retired. It's as long as you've got a roof over your head and you've got a meal on the table, you've got to make sure that you've got access to income of some sort. And if you don't have access to income, at least access to some of your money that you may have put away. So that's just number one, I would just suggest, just hang on to your job a bit longer if you're able to, and just see what happens over the next 6 to 12 months. The next thing I would look at is try to get rid of anything that you've got in the house that you don't need or you don't use. Maybe try and just have a wee garage sale or something like that, even if it's something you're only going to get a couple of dollars for. Every dollar, I think, at this stage is going to be helpful, and it also allows you to just thin down a lot of the stuff that you've got in your house that you've held on to for years because you've felt emotional about it, or it's just been there because it's always been there. Just have a look around and see if there's anything that you can sort of thin out of things that you've got in the house that you'd think, do I really need this? How about I get rid of it? So that would be the second thing I would be looking at, is just trying to thin out a wee bit some of the stuff that you've got in the house that maybe you don't need and that in the future could be a little bit cumbersome to have to worry about what you're going to do with it. So that would be number 2. Number 3 is I would make sure that at least I had a will made. Depends on whether you have family or, I mean, if you're, it works different ways, whether you're still married or whether you're not married or never married or whether you want to leave things to relatives in the family. I would be inclined to make sure I had my will made. And I have got a will, but I've got to get that updated. It hasn't been updated for about 8 or 9 years, so I need to get mine done. And now that all the new year's over and all the lawyers are just about back at work, I'm going to make sure that's something I get on and get updated over the next few weeks to a month, because I just want to do that. And I would recommend to anybody, if you've never had a will made, or you have a look at your will and see if it's all up to date, maybe just look at getting it updated or getting a new will or something. But that would be my third suggestion if you are looking to retire or if you've already retired. The fourth thing I would advise is to have a look at your travel documents. In particular, I would think make sure that you've got your passport up to date. Not saying that you're going to need it, but if you do need it at any particular time, it may be difficult to get it and to get it updated. I would be inclined to make sure that on retirement, at least you had your passport up to date, especially if you've got family living overseas, where it might be convenient to go and stay with family for a period of time. Now, I know that sounds a little bit sort of doom and gloom, but I'm trying to be real here. I'm trying to sort of face the worst possible outcome. What are the things that I'm going to regret not having done if by some unfortunate stroke of a pen things really turn to custard? So just make sure that your travel documents are up to date. If you've got vaccinations, if you need vaccinations to go to a particular country and you know that that's where you would go, make sure your vaccinations are up to date. But just ensure that all your travel documentation is up to date and that at a minute's notice you'd be ready to go if you had to. So, not saying that's what's recommended for everybody, but just some of you who are feeling a little bit sort of uncertain and a wee bit wondering what's going to happen in the future. It's just peace of mind, basically, to make sure, well, at least I've got my will made, or at least I've got my passport done. And even if you don't ever use it, it's good to have it there, and it's just giving you peace of mind. It's something less that you have to worry about. So I would be inclined to, as I said, for number 4, just make sure that all your travel documentation is up to date. It's readily available, and if you've got loved ones or whatever that are close, let them know where everything is. So that's just, I'm not trying to be doom and gloom here, I'm just trying to be realistic. So that's number 4. For number 5, try to keep some cash on hand. Depending on whether you live in a country that is mostly internet banking based, which here in New Zealand, we don't even have cheques anymore. Most people very seldom carry cash around. Everything is done by internet banking. You go and buy something, you do internet banking. If you go, quite often when you go to a garage sale, if you don't have cash on you, the people that are doing the garage sale will often have a bank account number there that you can do an instant transfer of cash into their bank account. We're in a society here where cash used to be king, but it really isn't anymore. But, have that bit of cash on hand. Most people do have access to a bit of cash now, but not in a big way. Most of our transactions for paying power, internet connections, anything like that, our rates, which I think are called property taxes in some countries, but our rates, property rates, everything is available and it's all done online. And so there's not really such a need to carry cash here. But in this situation, over the next 12 months, I would make sure that I had a little stash of cash put away somewhere just in case the banking systems went down. supermarket would be a place that you would need to have money. You can't pay your power bills or anything like that. Well, I mean, everyone's going to be in the same boat, but you've still got to be able to get food, have something to eat, and cash is probably a good idea to have a little bit of cash stashed away in the house somewhere. If you've got a loved one that you can trust, let them know exactly where it is. But it would depend on how much you feel you would want to do that. I would be looking at least enough for probably a month's groceries and, you know, the necessaries that you need to get, just in case of power outages, internet outages, something like that. So my recommendation is to make sure that you have some cash stashed away somewhere. Don't tell anybody else where it is, only someone who's near and dear to you. But I think that would be a good thing, and it makes sense to me to have a bit of cash that at least I can dip into if I need to in a hurry. Especially if I needed to go and buy some petrol or, you know, some, as you say, gas for the car. Everything here is done by internet, but they still take cash, which is an option that's available to everybody. So that would be my number 5. So if I can just recap there, I've got number 1, if you're still working, try and stay working if you can, and try and, you know, think about not retiring perhaps at least for another 6 to 12 months. Try to get rid of anything that you've got surplus in the house that you don't want or that you've been thinking of getting rid of, just trying to sell it, even for a couple of dollars or something like that, just so you've got that little bit of extra money and less baggage hanging around the house that you don't want to have to deal with in case of emergencies. Number 3 is make sure you've got your will made out. Just keep that updated, and just, you know, just as a security, just make sure that you've got that done. Everybody should have a will anyway, not just waiting for something dire to happen. You should always have a will, and I would recommend that if you haven't got one, at least get one, or if you've got one, just check that it's all up to date. Number 4, check your travel documents, especially your passport, and just ensure that everything's all up to date and it's valid, and you've got, you know, quite a bit of time on it if you need to. So that would be number 4. And of course number 5 is just make sure you've got access to some cash, especially if you live in a country where there's a huge reliant on internet banking, anything like that. Make sure that you've still got a bit of cash on hand. As I say, here in New Zealand, we don't do cheques anymore. Cheques have been, you know, discontinued with banks, so nobody has a checkbook anymore. So yeah, just make sure you've got a bit of cash that you can access, just enough perhaps to get you by if you need an emergency for 2 or 3 weeks or a month or something like that. So that's my 5 recommendations if you are thinking of retiring over the next 12 months or very soon. As I say, I'm not trying to be all doom and gloom. I'm just trying to be realistic, just trying to make sure that if you've got all those things sorted out, you're going to just be able to sleep a wee bit better, feeling that you've got, if everything turns to custard, then you've made plans and you've got something that you can work with. So that's my 5 recommendations. Hope I haven't scared anyone with that. I don't mean to, but they're certainly things that I've been looking at just in view of circumstances going on globally at the moment. It's the place is pretty, I wouldn't say volatile, but it's a bit on edge. So just think of yourself, take these personal actions, and just ensure that at least you know that you've got yourself sorted out. Okay, so that's me, and my name is June. If this is the first time you've been here, thank you for coming by. If you've returned from, been here before, thank you for coming back. I just like to wish everybody a happy weekend coming up. Sorry, America, you've got some really bad storms coming through there. I hope everybody is safe and well, and I think that's Canada, all the Northern Hemisphere, well in the Americas anyway. And I believe even down as far as Texas, you're supposed to be getting some snow. So just stay take care, stay safe, look after your neighbours, check on everybody if you know that people are living alone, or if you don't see anybody around, just make sure that you check on them, and just be very community wise and community friendly, because communities need each other right now. And that's just my little bit of advice. But that's for everybody, wherever you are in the world. But yeah, just stay safe and take care. I'll see you on the next one. Okay then, bye-bye.